Let's make a plaster slip casting mold using this print here. This is actually Joe from Old Forge Creations print. He's got these designs up on Makerworld. He's been doing a lot more experimenting with making 3D printed molds for plaster, which is great to see. This here is a 4-piece mold. This is one of the sides, and then there's another piece that is for the foot. So we'll need to make 3 plaster pieces to go around in a circle, basically around the outside, and this will be the foot piece, so a fourth for the bottom. Recently, I've been working on my own multi-part mold system. So kind of conceptually, these are very similar. This is actually in thirds, mine's in quarters, but that's a relatively simple difference. And then I also have a separate foot piece, but that's different than what Joe has done. And the advantage of these types of molds that are split vertically as opposed to horizontally is that they can have undercuts on the outside wall. So this is very subtle, but it actually tapers in towards the top a little bit and then towards the bottom. So you couldn't pull this straight up and down out of a piece of plaster to get stuck. You could actually split this horizontally, and I have horizontally split 2-part molds that could work with this type of form. But by having these vertical splits, you can do things like have textures on the outside. And Joe has some other examples of doing just that. I just picked the plain one for my own purposes, but it does open some more opportunities for different types of forms. I figured I would go ahead and try it. All the molds I've made so far have been of my own design, so I think this will be fun. So this bottom piece here is for the foot. It has these 2 pieces that slide around the outside. Then Joe's also modeled up some 3D printed clips that go around the outside just like this. So we'll need to pour plaster in here. And similar for the other piece of the mold, there are walls and some features that go in and slide together. One of the things I noticed right away when I pulled out the printer is that this is a pretty hefty piece, and it's because it's basically solid. Joe's added these grooves in it that go all the way through, and the idea is to give it a little bit of flex, although when I'm pushing on it, it doesn't flex a whole lot, and that's to help get it to release from the plaster. But to assemble it, same thing, these slide on from the end, similar to how my handles work. And again, there's clips that go down the side. One of the things I was curious about is how much tolerance there are in these parts. So these are just flat mating faces versus for shapecast, I've added ridges and grooves. And that's basically to make the path longer, but also to get things to register and align. And the trick with 3D printed parts is they're not perfect. They're very good, but they're not perfect. So you wind up with little gaps. If things are too tight, they won't fit. And these actually clips on the outside are pretty snug versus these here are actually pretty loose. So there might be a little bit of separation that goes on here. But I think it'll be fun to test. Similar to my design, it's got a slip well at the top, and Joe gives the volume of the plaster that we need for these pieces. I'm going to go ahead and do all the pieces at once, so I only have to mix up 1 batch of plaster. So I have a couple others that are ready to go. These are just in regular PLA filament I had laying around. Figured I might as well use it up for this. Normally don't use black on camera because it's harder to see. I'm going to go ahead and mix things up like normal. I'm going to take the dry and put it on the wet. I'm going to use my repurposed flour sifter so things go in and they can slake very well. We'll mix it up and pour the molds. All right, we'll go ahead and let that slake for another few minutes. While that's happening, a little bit more on the tolerances. So a while back, I went ahead and tried Tony from Digital Fire's 3D printed notches. In his article, he talks about basically testing a bunch of different tolerance sizes so that they fit together. And when I made these, I went ahead and did a bunch of test prints, and I got things to fit pretty well. I then had some other leftover filament. I figured I'd go ahead and print a bunch of others. And these were the exact same files on the exact same printer with a different filament. And these don't fit. They are too tight. So those don't fit in. These don't fit in. I go the other way. Those do fit. There's the other pieces of the notch system. Those don't fully seat together. I could force it probably. Those don't fit together. Even a very small difference in tolerance can wind up with an interference fit or something that doesn't fit at all. So there's this very fine line to walk in terms of getting the sizes just right. Even my same printers with different filament, I wound up with this problem. Mixing. I'll brush and I dab the surface to release the bubbles. Reach around everywhere. I did not do any prep to these molds, just like my normal Shep cast molds. Plaster doesn't stick to PLA. The surface properties are such that it doesn't really stick. And mold release, like mold soap, is actually a chemical reaction in the plaster. Got a video on that if you're curious. Not too much here. These aren't quite ready to demold yet, but I wanted to check for leaks. Oh yeah, so there's one down here. This was me spilling. Obviously I spilled on the outside. And this is hard to tell if it came through the inside or the outside. Maybe both. Yeah, a little bit of a leak there. Some down here on the sides. Yeah, same thing here. Interesting. So most of them leaked up here on the, I don't know if this is the top or the bottom. All right, I'll let these cure for a little bit longer and then we will try and demold them. All right, the plaster's cured, so we should be able to pull these out now. You should slide from each end. It's plaster on the end there. Pretty common for my handle molds. And so the end that leaked, I think is the foot. Kind of went down this groove here. So again, I think this is probably a tolerance thing. Maybe I didn't, it just couldn't seat all the way. All right, and the reason these are in here, as I mentioned, is so we can squeeze it to help release the plaster. Oh yeah, worked no problem. So we definitely have a little bit of flash. I want to be careful of this edge here. So clean that up. This edge here. So those are all the mating faces. I think we can take this one here. Good. And this back side. So we want to get the edge. This is the meniscus. That always forms. So there's that piece. I'll probably clean it up a little bit more, but no problem. So the inner. So it came apart. So this is actually the bottom face. And then this piece here will come straight off. Yeah, a little bit more flash around the edges here. Not too bad. So you get the plaster leak down the side, but this is basically coming off of the mold, so it's paper thin. Just like that. All right, let me spend a few minutes cleaning these up. There we go. So all the pieces assemble. So one of the differences that Joe has relative to what I've been thinking about is his piece actually gets captured for the foot between the side walls. So it goes together like this. And there's the assembled mold. I'm noticing a few gaps. There'll be a seam, but I don't think it'll be anything much to worry about. Not any more than normal slip cast pots. To clean it up, I just basically sanded the back and around the corner here. This part here is just structural. I got a little bit of a chip out here on the top, but that's up in the slip well, so not a big deal. And there's the bottom. Now I was curious how easy these would clean up, and no big deal. Putty knife, I think a little bit of scrubbing, and they would clean off to be reused. So even though there was a thin bit of plaster on all the different sides, I don't think that's much to worry about. I always wind up spilling plaster when I mix. That's why I put down my boards. So there might be a little bit that leaks out, but no plaster disasters for sure. And I went ahead and printed 3 of these. You could definitely do this 3 times in a row, no problems. And while there are some tolerances in these pieces here, in practice, I don't think it's a big deal, which is cool. Nice to know there is some wiggle room and these molds can still work. So overall, I'm very impressed. I think this is a great mold system for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry out and then we can slip cast in it. The plaster is dry and we're ready to try this out. The only thing I did was I went ahead and touched up some of these plaster seam lines a little bit more. They were sticking a little bit proud from where the plaster kind of leaked between the 3D prints. So in particular on the bottom where we had a little bit of a looser tolerance, and then some of these corners here. Should be pretty straightforward to assemble. There is a ridge here that fits into a groove here. Just like that. I'll take some rubber bands. That should hold it together. See down what the plaster seams look like. I just mixed up my slips. Let's go ahead and fill it up. There's less of a slip well here, so probably want to get it really close to the top so it doesn't draw down too far. However, this is a pretty small cup. There we go, all filled with slip. I'm gonna go ahead and give this the same 25, 30 minutes I give with my normal molds. These walls are thinner, so they may not absorb as much water. We'll see. All set, let's go ahead and demold. From the top, just like normal. This may not be ready to come yet. Like the plaster is noticeably damp. I think that's because it's so much thinner. Oh, I think it's gonna come straight off the sides. There we go. One small little tumbler. There's the seam lines. Those actually look really good. The foot. Overall, I think this works great. Definitely go and try them out if you want to go ahead and make your own. It's very easy to do. I think having these side wings part of the main mold is a good idea. I'm definitely going to do something similar with my own mold system. I'd already been thinking about that, but this kind of cements that. There was some plaster that kind of leaked down the sides. I don't think that's a huge deal. I think you want to pay attention to any little ridges that are created on the mating faces on all the pieces, just to make sure they're not in the way, but that's a relatively simple cleanup step to do. Wasn't sure how I'd like the foot captured in the bottom, but I think that worked out really well. It puts the seam down here on the foot, so it makes cleanup, I think, that much easier. There's likely going to be a transition to wherever it sits. That's kind of a natural place to put the seam. And no matter what you're doing with these types of molds, you're going to have the seam lines on the outside. These work great, and that gives me that much more motivation to get back to my own designs.